We're on Daf Tes Zion, and back to Rosh Hashanah. We had a couple of daf about Zroim and agricultural subjects back down the Mishnah before about Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan, Rosh Hashanah Le'Yirokos, and now we're back to the subjects of Rosh Hashanah. So this Mishnah is not really Rosh Hashanah, it's about the judgment. Rosh Hashanah means the beginning of the year. It happens to be that Aleph Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah, beginning of the year, and it also is the Yom Adin. There was, thank you very much. There was a pshat in one of the Mishnayos before that said Aleph Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah L'Shanim. Sandav Ches. One of the things over there was it means Ladin. Over there we had one pshat about the Shtoros or the Tkufa or Ladin. So according to that pshat, that the Mishnah already mentioned that the beginning of the year is a day of judgment for the rest of the year. That might be a reason why the Mishnah comes in with other times that the year is judged. Or maybe that's the similarity of Arba Rosh Hashanah, there are 4 Rosh Hashanah, there are 4 times the world is judged. Maybe that's enough of a similarity that it brings in our Mishnah. So here it's going to talk about the judgment. The first Mishnah was about the beginning of the year, and there are 4 beginnings of the year, and this Mishnah is about the 4 times that the world is judged. It happens to be that one of them is going to be both the beginning of the year and also the day of judgment, but not necessarily. Not every Rosh Hashanah is a day of judgment, as we said before, that there are beginning of the years that are not a day of judgment, and here's day of judgment that's not beginning of the years. So it starts off. The world is judged for 4 times a year, at 4 intervals. That's going to be Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, and Rosh Hashanah. Those are going to be the 4 intervals. So the Mishnah starts. Pesach al Batzeres al Peres Ilan. On Pesach is the judgment of the world on the grain. Grain, tvua usually means the 5 grains, wheat, barley, spelt, rye, oats. On Shavuos, there's a judgment of the fruit of the trees, which we just pointed out that before I said Rosh Hashanah Peres Ilan is Rosh Hashanah Lilanos is going to be Tu B'Shvat, but that was a Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year, as far as the demarcation between last year and the next year, as far as Arla and Maasros. And here it's talking about the judgment. It's a day of judgment, how it's going to yield. So Pesach is about Shavuot, Shavuos is about the fruit of the trees. Rosh Hashanah, Kol B'Yolam Oven L'Fanav Kivnei Maron, Shenemar Hayotziach Libam HaMeven Al Kol Maseh. Rosh Hashanah, all the people of the world, B'Yolam, those who come to the world, the people, so they pass before Hashem like B'nei Maron. The Gemara Mishnah doesn't say what B'nei Maron means, but she says the Gemara is going to tell us, so we'll leave it. There's going to be some B'nei Maron. That's going to be some kind of an idea that they go single, one at a time. And the point is that each person is judged individually. Shenemar. So the pasuk simply would mean that Hashem is the one who created everybody together, their hearts, He created all of them, and He understands all of their actions. What does the Gemara see? What does the Mishnah see in this pasuk? What is it coming to prove? So the Gemara does talk about that, even though He sees everybody together, but still He understands each one individually. That He judges everybody simultaneously, but He judges each one as an individual. But it wouldn't Dafka explain why the Mishnah has to bring this pasuk over here. Do you see that has anything to do with Rosh Hashanah? Do you see that that's a time of judgment? Is it bringing you proof to the time? Maybe it's just bringing you proof to the B'nai Maron, that aspect about each one individually. That's interesting. And the whole point of B'nai Maron is not the issue of the Mishnah. The Mishnah wants to know about to say that it's each one individually is added chidush. So I think maybe some explain that Yotzer sounds like Hashem created them, even though maybe that's not the Pashtan of the pasuk, but maybe it would mean that at the same time that Hashem created them, which would be Rosh Hashanah, if you hold the Tishrei Nivra Olam, so the same time of creation, that's when Hashem judges their Meven Al Kol Maseyim. So just a thought. I'm not sure of the pasuk, what the pasuk is coming to prove. A possibility it's coming to prove that it's way that was so far Pesach, and then Shavuos, and then Rosh Hashanah. Time is when they are judged about water. So general idea about the Mishnah is that there seems to be, besides the Rosh Hashanah, or Aleph Tishrei, when the people are judged, there seems to be things that are not on the individual, but more on the whole nation, on the whole land. Because it doesn't happen when tvua grows and a good crop, a bad crop, it doesn't go that one person's good, field is good, one is not. And when it rains for everybody. It means there's some judgments that are very collective, that it goes on the whole land. So there, it's not going to be a judgment about each person. But on Rosh Hashanah, each person is judged. It does also talk about that. It does say that we said that in the opening of Rosh Hashanah, which might be a contradiction over here. Here it sounds like the Rob and the Sova is something which is on Pesach and Shavuos, Sukkot, if it's going to rain. So maybe that needs explanation. But the simple pshat of the Mishnah would be that these three things of Tvua, Peres Elon, and Mayim is something which is not about each person as an individual, but it's more as a tzibur, and that's a different time of the year is it judged.
Rebbe, this is exactly what the Ran says right here in the Rif, and he clarifies it very, very nicely. It's a very Yesodistic Ran.
Thank you. The point I said, how to connect these three seasons together with Rosh Hashanah, the Gemara is going to talk about that also, that it could be that even though there's these Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, it also is connected to Rosh Hashanah, as we'll see in the Gemara soon. So, yes.
Okay, let's say, so we're davening for everything in Eretz Yisrael, the pavers and the water and everything, and in America, davening for the rain and everything. So everywhere they daven is for different places.
For themselves, for the tzibur. But that's why you're saying that's the reason why in Chutz La'aretz they don't start saying Talamot until the rain is good for them. That's what the Gemara says. That it happens to be that in America it's not Dafka December 4th. It goes to Babel. But whatever the point is, that it is true that in Eretz Yisrael they daven according to when you need rain in Eretz Yisrael, and in Chutz La'aretz when they need rain in Chutz La'aretz. That is true. That's a nice point. Okay, the Gemara continues.
By the way, Boy Olam, it's an interesting expression.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, that to say people, we call them Boy Olam, those who come to the world. That's a very interesting expression. To say people, it could have said Rosh Hashanah, Kol Adam, Kol Anashim. What is it, Boy Olam? Nice observation. Okay, the Gemara first talks about Tvua. The first one is Pesach Ala Tvua. So Tvua is interesting because the season of the growth of the
It could be the animals also.
Boy Olam. I don't think that they're judged. There's not a judgment on animals. They didn't do anything good or bad. It's not to judge them. And what's going to be with them is also going to be about people. It's judging the people. How people are going to be affected by animals. So there's no judgment on the animals of themselves, I would think. Or maybe you're saying, it doesn't sound like it. It says maybe no kol ma'asim. It sounds a little bit like it's people only. But it's nice try, nice thought. But it is the question, what does it mean about Boy Olam? Okay, the Gemara says, Tvua. Tvua is interesting because the season of the growth of the grain, it starts before Pesach and after Pesach. That's what the Gemara is going to be based on that, the idea, that fact. So the Gemara is going to try to figure out what the din of Pesach is. Because if it would all be after Pesach, so then on Pesach, Hashem is going to judge what's going to happen on the coming Tvua. But the fact that it starts before and it ends after, like Rashi talks about that, you planted in Cheshvan, many months before, Cheshvan, Kislev, Teves, Shvat, Adar, like almost half a year before Nisan, and then you don't cut it until later on. The wheat, for example, the pasuk says that K'tzir Chitim is in Sivan, so the din is right in the middle right smack in the middle in Nisan. So that's the question. What is the din Torah about? Hey Tvua, which grain is being judged on Nisan? Ilam Tvua the kaim. If it's the Tvua that's standing, the standing Tvua, holding by Nisan. It's been planted already in Cheshvan, Kislev, Teves, Shvat, Adar, starts blossoming. It's raining. It starts blossoming already, and Nisan there's a din on it. Is it din only on that? What's going to happen for the next 2 months until Nisan, Iyar, Sivan? So Kalhania Pratiki the other Allah Ema Sizdin. So if the din of Nisan is only on the standing Tvua, what's going to happen in the second stage of its growth? So when was there a judgment about the first half of its growth? The words would be all of the happenings that came upon it. When would they judge? Means if you're going to say that the Nisan, every Nisan, Hashem only judges the Tvua that's standing for its completion. So then there was no din ever on the beginning stage of the
It's
Tvua.
really the question on the first year.
No.
Creation.
The Gemara doesn't know yet what you know. You know the end of the Gemara. But the Gemara at this point is just saying that if the din of Nisan is only going to be on the continuation of the standing Tvua, so
It's grown already.
it's grown. It's in the middle of growing. In Nisan, it's growing. Mid-growing. The middle of growing. It's and you have another 2 months, let's say. Or
Why did I ask the question on the animals?
I'm not sure. Let's just go.
Okay, it's fine.
But so for the Gemara is asking that if the din of the Pesach is only on the Tvua that's standing, that means that it's only going to be a din on the second half of the growth. That from Nisan until Sivan, let's say. What happened to the beginning? You planted it in the Cheshvan. What happened? When was there judgment about all the things that happened to it in the first 5 months of its development? Ella Tvua the Mizdar. You must say that the Tvua is going to be not on what's standing already, but on every Pesach, the din is going to be on the following year's crop. This is coming in with your Chamachshava that it doesn't have to be on the standing Tvua. It's on Pesach, the din is going to be what's going to be from Cheshvan until Sivan, so to speak. that in Nisan, springtime, the din is going to be on the next year's crop. On the crop that's growing right now during Nisan, we're not judging it. Hashem's not judging it. That was judged last year already. That's what the Gemara thinks. That would make
Why
sense.
can't you say that it's going both?
That's
Also-
what they go. You don't end the Gemara already.
I don't remember. Okay.
But you do remember, but you don't. You remember it without taking it for granted. The Gemara is taking one.
Wait,
step-
excuse me. The Mizdara means to when it's seeding, right?
To plant it, to sown. When it's sown already. Toward them is not. I'm sorry. What's going to be sown? What is going to be planted? Not what's standing. What's going to be.
What's going to be sown next in the following coming up?
That'll be 7 months later. Now it's
Uh-huh.
Nisan. So Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, Tishrei, Cheshvan, over there. That's when it's going to be planted. So every Nisan, the judgment is going to be on the following year's crop. That's possible. That's good. But the Gemara is a kasha from a brisa, because if so, then there's nothing. The Pesach itself is not going to be a demarcation of anything before and after. Every Pesach, there's a din on the following year's crop from Cheshvan until Sivan, let's say. So then there would not be any difference between something that happens to the Tvua before Nisan or something happens to it after Nisan, because all that was judged in the previous Pesach. And there wasn't going to be a brisa that if something happens to the Tvua before Pesach, that was judged last year. But whatever happens to the Tvua after Pesach was judged on this Pesach, this present Pesach. So that's against what we just said. We said that every Pesach, Hashem is judging the following year's crop. That's the Kasha. So for the Mishnah, we could have said that each Pesach, the din is on the following year's crop. But remember the Chadina Mizdina, he's saying that every crop only has one judgment, that like we said, that every Pesach is judging from the following year's crop. But the Brisa says differently. But Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Tvua Shir Bakeri or Onos, Padam Pesach, you don't know the Shabbat. If anything happened to Tvua, the word carry means happening, or some problem happened to the Tvua before Pesach, that was judged in the previous Pesach. Let's say something happened in Adar. So that was judged in previous Pesach. But if anything happens La'achar Pesach, if anything happens to the Tvua after Pesach, you don't know that was judged now. If something happens in Iyar, the judgment for that was the previous month, in Nisan, on Pesach. That means that it doesn't only go that every Pesach Hashem is judging the following year, because then it wouldn't be a difference before Pesach, after Pesach. Every Pesach, the judgment is on next year's Tvua. But here it says there is a difference, that after Pesach, if something happens to the Tvua, it was just now judged. That's a kasha. So the Gemara is going to answer it soon, but before the Gemara answers it, we just finished the end of the Brisa, which is very interesting. That's another fact. Adam, Shir Balkeri, or Onis, Kodem Yom Kippurim, Nidin L'Shava. People ask this question: what happens to somebody in Aseres Me'etshuva? If something happens to somebody in Aseres Me'etshuva, or somebody died in Rosh Hashanah, when was it judged? So it says here that was last year's cheshbon. Every year, Rosh Hashanah, the judgment is from Yom Kippur to Yom Kippur. So if anything happens to, even though Aseres Me'etshuva, it's already in the process of getting this year's din, but it's too late for what's going to happen today, because the Aseres Me'etshuva till Yom Kippur was judged last Rosh Hashanah. Each Rosh Hashanah, there's a judgment from Yom Kippur to Yom Kippur. And here it seems to say, that's okay, by a person, there's no problem. They have no kasha by a person. But here it says that Pesach is the cutoff point from some things that happened to the Tvua before or after. Whatever happens to the Tvua before Pesach was judged last Pesach. Whatever happens to the Tvua after Pesach is judged this Pesach. So the kasha is that we said that that's not true, because then where was ever the din of if the judgment is only from Pesach to Pesach, so who ever judged it the year before? So now the Gemara is saying what Rabbi Rama said before, Shmamina, Trey, Dini, Mizdana, that there are two dinim. That seems every Pesach, the judgment is on the end of the present crop and the beginning of next year's crop. So the Tvua grows from before Pesach till after Pesach, let's say from Cheshvan until Sivan. So on every Pesach, there's going to be a din. What's going to be the Gzar din of the rest of the standing Tvua, and also what's going to be the beginning of the next crop. And therefore, everything's good. That everything has a din at some time. And also, if something happens to the crop after Pesach, it was just now judged. So every Tvua passes by two dinim. A person only passes by one din. Tvua has two stages of din. Was there any question now about animals? Anything else?
If you have a minute, if you're in a rush, then we can skip it now.
If it says Nisan or Pesach, then how do we learn that there's two?
It does. It says that it's judged on Nisan. What's judged on Nisan? Every Nisan. Yeah, I'm not saying there's another date. It's only Nisan. Only Pesach is their judgment. but there are two judgments going on Pesach. One is going to be what's happening.
Oh, two judgments on Pesach. One's for the future and one's for what happens right after Pesach.
Right, right.
I see. I see.
Is there anything not about animals? Anything else in the Mishnah that you could talk about besides? I'm asking of Avram.
Yeah, I can ask you a question like this.
For
Why do
water,
we say that person is judged two, from Rosh Hashanah to Kippur, is two judgments?
There's not. He's judged from every Rosh Hashanah. He's judged from Yom Kippur to Yom Kippur. There's no difficulty by another. There's one person. Here there are two crops. By a crop, there are two crops. It's not the same crop. One Pesach and the next Pesach are two different crops. So, and it starts before Pesach and after Pesach. So there, the Gemara says that there's a judgment on the end of this crop and the beginning of the next crop. That's called two judgments. It's two different crops. But by a person, if you have
Two different years.
two different years, no, it's the same year from Pesach to Pesach. It's the end of the first and the beginning. Okay, Amar Abaye. The next idea the Gemara is going to say is that since you know that there are two dinim, so if you see that I'm not sure of the details of the next one, I'll say maybe Rashi says it, but the Gemara is going to say that since there's going to be a judgment on the end of the crop, like the Nisan's going, if you see that you're in a good season, that the crop that you have, you can tell that there was a good din, and you know there's another din happening at the end of the crop. So take advantage of the Gzar din. Amar Abaye, Hilkach, ki chazi enishtamas of Zara Afla, likten v'lizra charfa. The Adam Mati Lamadine Kadam Salaf. So I'll say Rashi's Rashi. The word Afla means the late war. That's what Afla always means late, and Charfa means the one that's fast. Rashi explains that Afla means, for instance, wheat, and Charfa means fast means barley, for instance. Wheat takes much longer to grow than barley does. Rashi says that wheat is grown from Cheshvan until Sivan. He doesn't say the part of Sivan. He says he planted in Cheshvan, and he says that barley you plant in Shvat and Adar. You plant it much later. So the point that Rashi is saying is that if you see that there's a good Gzar din, you see that wheat is growing well. It's holding now Cheshvan, Kislev, Teves. Things are going well. You planted the wheat and it's growing well. So you see that the Gzar din last year was a good Gzar din. So take advantage of the good Gzar din and plant things that could grow before the coming Pesach. He says that barley you could plant now Shvat time, and you can cut it. It seems to say you can cut it off before Nisan, or the Gemara says it's going to be almost finished growing already, so it's going to be successful. If you see that last year's Pesach was a good year, Hashem blessed the year, it was a good Gzar din, so it might change, and the coming Pesach it might change. So if you're gonna plant things, it might be a bad Gzar din. Let's say you plant things in a time that it didn't grow so much when Nisan comes again. So it could be that the second stage of Gzar din in the coming Nisan is not going to be good. So take advantage of the good year. It seems again that even though we said that Rosh Hashanah there's a Gzar din for each person, but there's a general din on the tzibur. If you see that it was a good crop, this year's good crops, take advantage of the good season and do what you could in order to get good crops. So if you see that the wheat is growing well, that means you could tell that there was a good Gzar din last Pesach until the coming Pesach. There's going to be another Gzar din on Pesach on the end of the tour. So try to plant things that'll grow fast in a way that most of it will be standing before the Pesach comes. So yeah,
Right, so
you have to ride.
the good din of the
Right, so you're right. You're riding on the good din. What? Afla, the word afla means late, but Rashi says that it means that wheat, which takes longer to grow, and you happen to plant it earlier. And charfi means things that grow fast. Maybe the word afla is things that take long to grow, and charfi means things that grow fast. And Rashi says that afla means the wheat and dusemes, and charfa means barley. And Rashi says the point is that you can plant the barley late in the season, and it'll be almost finished by the time that the Gzar din of Pesach comes again. And it's not going to be mitkalkel from whatever, a couple of weeks after Pesach, even if there's going to be bad Gzar din in the coming year. But you have to remind that you got the Sorim also.
Good din.
Amar Abaye Hilkach, when a person sees that the Zara Afla, that the seeds that he planted of the long crop, which is the wheat, is being masliach, likten v'lizra charfa, let him fast chaparine and plant this orim, the barley, which grows faster. The adam mati lamadayim yekadem salak. By the time it's going to be a new din and the new Pesach, most of it grew already. Okay, and the Gemara.
Maybe he's on a good what's the word? A good maslul. He just says, "Oh, good. I'm gonna have a good year coming up too."
then maybe next year each Nisan is a new Gzar Din, and the Chita and the Tfu is going to be done again for the rest of it. So if you see it's going well, so plant in a way that you should be able to almost be finished with it, and it's going you have to run on last year's crop still, the last year's Gzar Din. Okay, we finished all about that, and you come out that Tfu has 2 Gzar Din. Each Pesach there's a Gzar Din on the remainder of what's growing already, and also what's going to be planted in the future.
That's interesting because so Hashem makes one. Let's say regarding Parnas, Hashem makes it that this year a person's doing Matzliach, or this every month he decides where at begin at Rosh Hashanah, whatever the Rosh Hashanah is, what's going to be. One specific kav for the whole year. Interesting way of looking.
By the crop, I think by the crop especially only, or maybe only. Even in the bracha we say Mevarach Hashanim. It's very interesting that by a crop it goes by the yearly crop. It doesn't go according to the month. But the crop is the crop.
But you're saying other things could be split.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be that the Rosh Hashanah, when a person how much money he's going to make, doesn't have to be uniform the whole year. But by a crop, it goes with the year, a yearly crop. So if there was a gzera that the crop is going to be good, so it's good for the year. That's what it sounds like. The one starts a new subject. New subject.
His
Yes.
question is actually what both the Ritva and the Meiri done on. And the reason I'm not commenting is because I find Lashon Sosros in both of them. But what they're talking about is basically a din on how much, and a din on how much hana you have from it, and a din on are you marviak from what you have or not, as the difference between Rosh Hashanah and Pesach. But I find steerus in the Lashon of both the Ritva and the Meiri, so I can't really comment. But those are the differences in the subjects. How much? Are you going to be nana from it? And are you going to be happy from, and revak? How much revak? So revak and nana may be different things also. That's what I see in their Lashonas, which I saw inside.
Yeshikov. New sugya. Mani Masnisin. Who's the author of our Mishnah? Again, our Mishnah said Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, and Rosh Hashanah. And the Gemara has a bunch of Tanaim and says that the Mishnah doesn't fit with anybody. Lo Rav Meir, Lo Rav Yehuda, Lo Rav Yossi, Lo Rav Nosson. There's a Brisa that has 4 Tanaim, and our Mishnah doesn't seem to fit with anybody. The Tanya, Hakol Nidon of Rosh Hashanah, Gzar Din Shalem Nechtam B'Yom Kippur, Devi Rav Meir. Rav Meir doesn't say about Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. He says no, everything is judged Rosh Hashanah. He doesn't know for Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. All the things that our Mishnah said about Tvua and Peres Elon and Mayim and different times of the year, he says no. Everything is judged in Rosh Hashanah, and the Gzar Din, what we call the Ksiv and the Chasima, the judgment and the decree, that's what the Gemara calls, what we call the Ksiv and the Chasima. So it says everything is judged. Everything is judged in Rosh Hashanah. Nothing about Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Everything is judged Rosh Hashanah, and the decree of all of them is going to be on Yom Kippur. Divrei Rabbi Meir. He's against our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. That everything, all these subjects are judged on Rosh Hashanah. It's against our Mishnah, and the decree, the Gzar Din, is going to be each one in its own time. And Adam neither on Rosh Hashanah also like everybody else, like everything, all the other subjects. The Gemara is going to explain that this also is not like our Mishnah, because according to him, it should have said Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, and Yom Kippur. If you're talking about the Nidon, the Ksiva, what we call, so then it's not going to be Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, because he says that everything is in Rosh Hashanah. And the Gzar Din, the Chsima, so he says, you're right, that's Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, but by man, it's not going to be Rosh Hashanah, it's going to be Yom Kippur. So Amish doesn't go like him either, because Amish says Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, and Rosh Hashanah. So that's going to be the Gemara's kasha also. Rabbi Yossi seems to not regard Rosh Hashanah to be a day of judgment more than any other day. He says there's a judgment every day. It's pasuk in the Yom that says that Hashem, you reckon man every morning, constantly.
So then you wouldn't have such a big Rosh Hashanah. Like
So Rosh-
all the davening, all the.
Yeah, he also has Malchus, Sechonis, and Shafaros, but it doesn't seem to be a judgment. He's going to say Zephronos might not be judging. It's not called a judgment. It's going to be, it's not judging his actions, and it's whatever Yom Shua is going to be. It says in the pasuk Yom Shua, Zichron Shua. Also in the Mishnah, he talks about. Rabbi Yossi also agrees with Malchus, Sechonis, and Shafaros. So you'll have to explain something else. And also Agav, we have Malchus, Sechonis, Shafaros also on Yovel of Yom Kippur, Yom Kippur of Yovel. So it could be that Malchus, Sechonis, and Shafaros alone doesn't mean a day of judgment. I'm just pointing out that it seems.
Because it doesn't say Mefurish.
It says Yom Shua, it says different Yom Shua. That's what it says in the
There's
pasuk.
nothing to do with
Okay.
judging.
So Rabbi Yossi seems to say there's nothing special about Rosh Hashanah as far as the judgment goes. Rabbi Nosson, he says once every day Hashem judges man. Rabbi Nosson, no more other than Mechol Shah, every constantly, not only once a day, constantly a man is judged. Shenema, L'Regam Tivchanenu. It's the same pasuk as Tivkadenu L'Vkarim, L'Regam Tivchanenu. That means constantly, every minute Hashem is examining him. So there are 4 opinions over here. The first one says that everything is Rosh Hashanah and the Gzar Din is Yom Kippur. There's no Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot as far as Din. Rabbi Yossi said that there is Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Yehuda, I'm sorry. Rabbi Yehuda says there is Rosh Hashanah, there is Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, but that's only as far as the Gzar Din goes. And the Gzar Din of man is Yom Kippur, not Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Yossi says every day. Rabbi Nosson says every hour, every minute. So who's our Mishnah? And the Gemara just speaks out what we said. Even Rabbi Yehuda, who's the closest, also doesn't fit. Maybe you'll say our Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Yehuda, and it doesn't mean the judgment, but it means the decree. That's why Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, even though the judgment is on Rosh Hashanah, but at least the decree is on Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, so that fits with our Mishnah. But then it wouldn't make sense about Rosh Hashanah. Because by man, our Mishnah says that it's Rosh Hashanah, and Rabbi Yehuda said that the Nidon is Rosh Hashanah, but the Gzar Din, the Chsima, is on Yom Kippur. Our Mishnah doesn't say Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, and Yom Kippur. It says Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, and Rosh Hashanah. So it doesn't fit with anybody. So the Gemara says you're right. It doesn't fit with any one of these 4 Tanaim, but it's going to fit with the 5th Tana and the Brisa, different Brisa. The author of our Mishnah is going to be the Tana de Rabbi Shmuel, the Tana de Rabbi Shmuel, but not much like our Mishnah. God befrakim olam nidon, the Pesach al Tvua, but says al Pers Elon, the Chag Derom al Amayim, but the Nidon Rosh Hashanah, Gzar Din Shalom Nechtam Yom Kippur. That he does say there's something about Yom Kippur. There is a Chasima. Our Mishnah doesn't talk about Chasima. Our Gemara just talks about the judgment, and that's what our Mishnah says. Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, respectively, for Tvua, Pers Elon, Mayim, and Adam is Rosh Hashanah. That's all as far as the judgment, that's Ksiva, and the Gzar Din of man is on Yom Kippur. And it's not Tchilas Din. And according to that, our Mishnah is talking about the judgment. It's not talking about the Gzar Din, about the Chasima, and that's not on Yom Kippur. So the Gemara found the Tana. So it's true that our Mishnah doesn't fit with everybody. It's not universal Mishnah. It's only according to the Tana of Rabbi Shmuel. The Gemara goes back to the Brisa that mentioned of Yossi. Then
So the Rabbi Shmuel is like
it's like our Mishnah.
that Mishnah, which is Rosh Hashanah is yes judgment on men.
Other Tana, Rabbi also said. Rabbi also said.
What are we missing about Yom Kippur? There's no mention of Yom Kippur. So what are we touching from that?
There's no kasha. Our Mishnah is not talking about the Gzar Din. It's just talking about the Nidon, the judgment, the Ksiva, the Nidon. That's going to be on Rosh Hashanah, and Rosh Hashanah talks about Yom Kippur. The other Tana, don't put it on Mishnah. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Nosson, Rabbi Yossi, they all done whole like our Mishnah. Each one for a different reason. The Gemara says 2 lines before it spreads. Rav Chisda, my time of Rabbi Yossi. Where's Rabbi Yossi get that man is judged every day? Tomorrow says, well, he said we get it from. He says in his own reason, he says the reason is because the pasuk says in the Yov, that you reckon him every morning. So that's what he gets, that is every day. So the Gemara explains what's difficult. I'm not Nachigami in the first white line. I meant to ask like that. The following. My time means the pasuk says, like let's go back to the pasuk a second, there's several back. It says Vatifkadenu libkarim. Here it is. Vatifkadenu libkarim. And the pasuk continues, those 4 words. Vatifkadenu libkarim, that you reckon man every morning and you examine him every minute. And Rav Nosson said, look at the end of the pasuk, it says, you examine him every minute. So man is judged constantly. But the verse, he didn't say that. Why didn't he agree? Because just because it says Tifchanenu doesn't mean a judgment. It just means that Hashem examines him. So, if it's not actually a judgment, so then the beginning of the pasuk is also not a right. There's no reason to say that Tifkadenu means a judgment. Maybe it also just means that Hashem is reckoning him, but doesn't mean mamish the same level as a judgment. So therefore, this wouldn't be enough source of Yossi to say that man is judged every day. So again, in the first white line, we need to ask on Rabbi Yossi, how come you don't hold like Rav Nosson? Because Bechina Yunei B'Almahi, that the word Bechina v'Tivchanenu, the Tivchanenu just means to look into it, to examine it. So Pekidanami Yunei B'Almahi, the word Pekid also you can't prove more than that. Maybe it also just means that Hashem is looking at him and examining him, but it doesn't mean that he's judging him. He's not passing any judgment. So that wouldn't be enough right for Rav Yossi. Rav Chisda, Rav Yossi means different pasuk. even though the Brisa said the pasuk is but if Kedenu Karim. But Rav Chisda says, I'll bring another pasuk for Rabbi Yossi, which is going to be more beferish. It says, Lasos Mishpat Avdo, Mishpat Amo Yisrael Vayom V'Yamo. We know this pasuk from Hoshanas, and over there it's talking about the Shlomo Melech David, that Hashem should do the judgment of his servant, which is me, the king, and the judgment of his nation Yisrael Vayom V'Yamo. And here's the words, Vayom V'Yamo, every day. So you have a daily judgment of Am Yisrael. So that's where Rabbi Yossi saw that man is judged daily. The Gemara continues. The rest of it is going to be Aga. We brought the pasuk of Chisda, the pasuk of Lasos Mishpat Avdo, Mishpat Amo Yisrael Vayom V'Yamo. The Gemara is going to dash. We had this rush earlier, a couple of pages ago. The Gemara over there talked about that the Goyim are judged also on Rosh Hashanah. It says a special pasuk to add on that the Goyim will also judge, and the Gemara said Am Yisrael is judged first. And it brought down this Gemara the same way as the king that gets judged before the rest of the nation. That's the Gemara over here. Rav Chisda, excuse me. If there's a king and a community, his community that are being judged, so the king is judged first. This pasuk we said, and it's talking about the king. Shlomo said about himself to judge me and the nation. So he said it himself first. The king is judged first. So Rabbi Chisda said, from this pasuk you see that if we have to judge a king and a tzibur, the king is judged first. My timer. What's his for? Why should it be so? We brought a pasuk. What's his for? Maybe because one reason is because it's not derech eretz to leave the king sitting outside. He doesn't have to wait to be his turn. So derech eretz of the king is that he should go first. The other answer would be maybe because before the anger is increased, because after the tzibur was judged and there's going to be some time against them, so then it would be bad for the king also. His Gzar Din would come out worse. So it's for the benefit of the king to go first. I just thought of a pshat that it doesn't mean that just because the king's in a bad mood, the judge is in a bad mood, like that's not fair. He had a bad day, so he's gonna paskin wrong. It doesn't sound like that. So I thought a possibility that the judgment that the judge and the king and the people are probably with the same issue. Probably it's something that the king and the people it's a joint issue. The president and his whatever's going to be his presidential aides. So it's probably going to be something that has to do with the same issue. So in the same issue, if the judge decided that this is that they're corrupt, they did something wrong, so then it's going to be bad in the judgment of the king also, not because he's in a bad mood, but because he's judging this case, and this case looks bad. So just a thought to say that it's not just because he's in a bad mood that he's going to judge bad, but because in this case there's a charonaf against this case. That's a possibility. The Gemara continues. Amar Rav Yosef, Kaman Maslina Nidna Aksiri Ramiri. According to who, we have many opinions about it. We have Rav Meir, Rav Yehuda, Rav Yossi, Rav Nassan. According to who do we daven nowadays on sick people? Rashi says Katsiri means the Pashtra will mean sick people and Miri, people that are dying. And who Rashi says it means Tamid Chachamim, that weak. Rashi does not daven. Rashi says that they're weak people. But the point is, why are you davening in the middle of the year? The kasha is if everything is judged from Rosh Hashanah, so then there's no purpose in davening in the middle of the year. You should just daven on Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara says, "Come on, Rav Yossi, only according to Rav Yossi, or you say Rav Nosson, that there's a daily judgment or a constant judgment, so then it makes sense to daven. But if the judgment is Rosh Hashanah, so there's no purpose to daven in the middle of the year." Teres has a problem because everybody holds me daven for Esrei, Rifa'inu, Baruch Aleinu, all kinds of brachas. So that the Gemara doesn't talk about, and that seems, even according to the first teretz, it's not only Rav Yossi. Rashi, the Gemara makes it sound like according to Rav Yossi, it makes sense to daven for sick people, but the kasha is going to be everyone says Rifa'inu and Shemon Esrei.
Maybe can lighten the judgment.
That's the Gemara's answer soon, but the first teretz says Kaman Rav Yossi. So that's the kasha. Tais has the kasha. Ayin Sham. Tais has the kasha. He had a problem. What did the Gemara in the first teretz think about every day Shemon Esrei? Even though the Gzar Din was really on Rosh Hashanah, and it's not easy to change that, but at least it's good for something. That crying out is worth something even after the Gzar Din. We're going to see more later on, and not everybody agrees, but the Yitzchak says so, that it does help. So therefore, even though it's after the Gzar Din, but it does help also to daven even after Rosh Hashanah. Tanya, I'm Rav Yehuda, Mishum Rabbi Akiva, Torah, famous Gemara, and it's going to go through Pesach and Shavuos and Sukkot and Rosh Hashanah of how come the Torah said to do certain mitzvahs during these periods. How come Hashem, the Torah commanded to bring the Korban Omer on Pesach? The answer is Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Avir Lefanei Omer B'Pesach Kadesh Shetisbach Lechem Tevuah Shebesados. Since it's the time of Tevuah, I would have thought the Gemara means the time that it's growing. Rashi says the time that it's judged. So Hashem says, being Omer, in order that the Tevuah should be blessed. That since you do a mitzvah with Tevuah, so that's the reason why the Tevuah should be blessed. So it's for your own benefit that Hashem says to bring, it's for our own benefit that Hashem says to bring the Korban Omer. And the same thing by Shtei Lechem on Shavuos. How come Hashem said the mitzvah to bring Shtei Lechem on Shavuos? Because that's the time that the fruit grows on the trees. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Avil Lefanei Shtei Lechem Batzeres Kedei. First one line. In order that the fruit of the tree should be blessed, so bring Shtei Lechem. The obvious question is, what does Shtei Lechem have to do with the fruit of the tree? If we'll say bring fruit, okay, bring fruit, that'll be something that all the fruits have blessing. But Shtei Lechem is made out of wheat. So why is that a reason that there should be a blessing on the Peres Elon? So that's a kasha. I don't have a good teretz. I don't have easy teretz. Rashi offers two pshatim on the bottom. He says either because that's the time that you can start bringing bikurim from Shavuos. The problem with that is that it doesn't have to do with the Shtei Lechem. It has to do with the time of Shavuos. Rashi says another pshat that the Yehuda holds that chita, at the end of the page, Rashi says chita. He said it's called the eights. It could be the chita in the times of Gan Eden were different than the chita that we have. It was like an eights. It was big, but that's maybe a reason why chita is also called eights, which is difficult. Also difficult because the Gemara said a second ago that Tevuah is on Pesach. Chita is not on Shavuos. So I don't know the answer, but the reason they bring Shtei Lechem on Shavuos is the order there should be bracha for the Peres Elon. Why does Hashem say to pour water libations on Sukkot? That's the time that's the din on the water. It's time that the water rains. It rains in that time of the year. So Hashem says that bring the water, that it should be bracha for you and your rains. And the last thing, which is very famous, and also the reason why Hashem says that you should say before him Malchi, the Psukim of Malchi is the Psukim of Zechron, the Psukim of Shafaros, and Musaf of Rosh Hashanah. Malchi is Kadesh Tamlichuni Aleichem, because in that way you'll have the success that Hashem is going to rule over you. Just like the whole list over here, people make a mistake. They think Kadesh Tamlichuni Aleichem, that's what you're doing. That's what you should do. That's not what you should do. That's what you're going to get. That you're going to get the result. Like other things that by the Omer, and what you should get with bracha and the Tevuah, you should get bracha in the Peres Elon, you should get bracha in the water. So in order you should get Hashem's kingship, which is the best thing, that's the aslacha. Stay malchuyas in order that you should get Hashem should become king over you. That's the biggest success, that Hashem should be king. People have a wrong idea what a king is, so they say all kinds of pshatim over here. But the word, simple words, not saying that. The words are saying that the aslacha is going to be that Hashem is going to rule over you. That's the biggest aslacha you can have.
Why is it biggest? Why can't it be?
Because a king means that he takes care of the people. What is a king? People think of a king as somebody that he stays on the couch over there and they feed him grapes and they fan him and everything is just to serve him. A king is the one who takes care of the people. That's what a king is. So to have Hashem be rule over us is the best aslacha that we can have. So say malchuyas in order that Hashem should rule over us. And also Zechronos and say the psukim of Zechronos in order that your reckoning should come before me for good. And Bameba Shofar, that probably has to be with the Shofaros, as we're talking about, say Shofaros, because that's going to be the way that the Zechronos are going to happen. Maybe also the Malchuyos, that the Shofaros is something that's a tool, both the Shofar itself, the blowing of the Shofar, and the Psukim of Shofaros is going to cause Malchuyos. And the Rishon I'm talking about here is also going on Malchuyos. It could be it's only going back on the Shofaros, on the Zechronos, I'm sorry, that the Shofar and the Zechron go together. And some say also it goes on the Malchuyos. That's not simple. The Pashup Shad is that the Shofar goes on the Zechronos, maybe also on the Malchuyos. New Gemara, 4 lines from the bottom. How come we blow in a shofar of a ram? So the kasha is who says to blow in a shofar of a ram? They can use any kind of shofar. So we'll see later on the sugis about a shofar. But some say that it means that the custom is to use a shofar of a ram, even if you're not mechuyev to. Or if there is a shita later on that talks about in the mikdash, secharim, kefufim. So we'll see later on that Chavov, maybe there's an issue about a shofar of a ram. Nowadays, all the shofars you get are rams. That's the custom, to use the shofar of a ram. So why is that? Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, tiku lefanai b'shofar shalal kedei she'eskol lochem kedei sitzim ben agrom u'malani alechem kilo akartem aschem lefanai. That's going to be a zecher for Akedah Yitzchak. Over there it says after Hashem told Avram not to slaughter Yitzchak, so then Avram saw an ayil and he slaughtered that. So that ayil is a zecher for Akedah Yitzchak. So too use the shofar of an ayil, and the custom is to use the shofar of an ayil in order to bring up the the schos of Yitzchak. And Hashem says, I consider it as if you yourselves, you people, that you yourselves offered yourself as a korban on the Mizbeach. Next, Gemara of Yitzchak. Lama token, the interesting, many Gemara of Yitzchak over here just can't enter my mind that maybe there's something to do with Yitzchak. That's the Midas Adin. I'm not sure that maybe that's how we have so many things about Yitzchak over here. Amar Yitzchak. Lama token Rosh Hashanah. How come you blow on Rosh Hashanah? So the more jumps up. Why do you blow? Hashem said to blow. Lama token Rahman Amatiku. So it's just to point out that the Gemara doesn't mean that you don't talk about reasons of mitzvahs. We just had a whole list. The Torah and Omer and Shtei Lechem and Nischamayim and even about Malchus Chonis v'Shafar. So you're allowed to ask, why does the Torah say something? But here, that wasn't the question. The question was, why do we blow? Why do we blow? Why do we bring the Omer? Why do we bring Shtei Lechem? Because Hashem said so. Of course, because Hashem said. So that's not a kasha. Why we blow? Lama token Rahman Amatiku. Lama Mirian. How come we do Trua? That's also not a kasha. Mirian, Rahman Amazichman Trua. That's why you do Trua. That's not a kasha. The kasha is Ella Lama token and Mirian Kashen Yoshvin. The token of Mirian Kashen Omdin. How come we do twice? And that means before Musaf, that's called Kiyas Yusha. That before, we know nowadays we stand during the Kiyas in the beginning also, but really you ought to sit down. So that's called Kishen Yoshvin, and then again Tkiyah Trua Kishen Omdin. That means how come we blow more than you have to? The mitzvah is to blow only one time. One time means Tisha Kolos, Tkiyah Trua Tkiyah 3 times, and we don't know what a Trua is, so we do also Shvarim and a Trua and a Shvam Trua. But anyway, there's a minimum amount that you have to blow, and we do more than that. We do double. We do it first before Musaf, and we do it again during Musaf. And that was the most kasha.
Sorry, what did it mean by sitting?
That you're allowed to
I'm
sit
missing what it means to sit.
before Shemana Esrei, before Musaf. Before Musaf. I just mentioned we do stand, but halachically you're allowed to sit. Did the Sfardim sit by the Tkiyas?
Could be.
Anybody know if the Sfardim sit? I don't know. But it means not during the Musaf. Before Musaf, so we blow Tkiyas, and you also already did the mitzvah deraisa. But then we blow again. We blow again during Musaf. Either during some people even do it during the Tefillah Lacha, some do it by the Chazar Hashatz. Everyone does Chazar Hashatz. But the question is, why do you blow 2 times? You did the mitzvah. Why you do more than that? And the answer is to confuse the Satan. How do you confuse the Satan? So Rashi says, there's 3 pshatim over here. Rashi says, in order to show how we're mechaber the mitzvahs. The fact that we're doing more than we have to do, so that shows we have chibur of mitzvahs, and that then the Satan doesn't have what to say. Rashi, the top line, Kishishma Yisrael mechaber v'nisam mitzvahs. The statement vav. He closes up his mouth. He doesn't have what to say when he sees Am Yisrael is so beloving the mitzvahs. They do more than you have to do. This brings down a medrash that says that he thinks that it's the shofar of Mashiach. That's the Tosfos. Others say that it causes them to do tshuva, and that's what confuses the Satan, because he sees Am Yisrael do tshuva because of the shofar. But anyway, in order to
the Ritva has a very interesting pshat, which he says also is Kedivrei Haran, Kedei la'arbeb hasatan kodem tefila, shelo yastin betfila seinu.
And why do you do it a second time?
That's a hemshek. I don't want to go into it. It's too long.
Okay, but that was the most kasha. Why do we do it 2 times? Okay, Nugamar. Any year that they didn't blow in the beginning, by Rosh Hashanah, they didn't blow. So Taisa says, of course, if they couldn't, they couldn't. But it means what they could have. And I'm sorry. Taisa says if there was Shabbos or something like that, they didn't blow because it was Shabbos. So then that's not the Gemara's not talking about that. But if there was only second,
the Ritva says it very simply, actually, in 4 lines. He's v'chosrim v'tokim v'kashem omdim kedei la'arbeb es hasatan. V'al zeh amar shekol shana she'ein tokim la b'tchilasa hainu shelo taku kodem atefila. V'lo his arbeb es hasatan. Oh, the second thing, shetaku miyusha v'lo taku meumad afal pi shekaimu es mitzvahs hayom marim lo besofa mishum shelo his arbeb hasatan.
so you're going on the next Gemara. You're not going on the Gemara before. New Gemara. I'm Rabbi Yitzchak. Kol shana she'en tokum lo b'tchilas amriyam lo b'sofa my time at the lo yabav satan. Any year that they didn't blow in the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, so then there's going to be a bad year. Mriyam lo b'sofa. It's going to be a bad year. Why? Because you didn't have the Eber Satan. So what Rav Manibal just said was that the Eber Satan is only by blowing twice. So when the Gemara says that they didn't blow, it doesn't mean they didn't blow at all. Even if they blew once, but they didn't blow twice, and they didn't have this Eber Satan, so then it's not going to be a good year because the Satan was not confused and he was able to press charges. The Amar Rav Yitzchak, Kol Shana, Sherosha B'Tchilasa Misasheres B'Sofa. Any year that's poor in his beginning. Poor doesn't mean financially, but it means that people were nichna, people humbled themselves to the tshuva. It was poor, humble. So then they're going to be rich. It's going to be a good year. Shenema, he has a drush about Rosh. Meveishis Hashana, Meveishis Ksiv. It says Meveishis Hashana Vadach Rishana. Vidash that means from Tishrei. Kichok Yisrael Hu Mishpat Alakei Yaakov. And he says that the word Rashis, if you look in Rashis, it doesn't have an aleph. It's written without an aleph. So Rashis could be read as Rosh. Rosh means poor. And Ad Achris, Achris, it means till the end of the year, but also if sometimes you find that the word Achris means like the good end. Sofa Sheish Achris, the good end. If they're Rosh, if they're poor in the beginning, it doesn't mean financially, it means that they were humble because of they did the tshuva from their various, so then it's going to be a good end. Also, Rabbi Yitzchak, another din.
Rebbe, the Ritva does answer your kasha. He says, the Hiksha Ritva, Kavan Shekavar Yotzi De Chovasa Betkiyas the Miyushav, Im Kain Madua Tokin B'Mu'umad. V'hainu Shekavan Shekavar Yotzi De Chovasa Betkiyas Shekodem HaTefila, Lo Yekayim Betkiyas Shatefilah's Din HaTekiyos Sha'al Seder HaBrachas V'Deloka Devrei Aran. So V'Teretz HaRitva, Sha'osim Kain Lemitzvah Kedei Lahalos Brachas B'Tekiya B'Tzibor Kederek Sha'osim Brachas Al HaTainis. Though bepashtus kavanaso she'ein ze mishum din hatekiyos al Rosh Hashanah, ela kedin tekiyos b'tainis v'kein kasav achazanish in kuf lamed.
The people are not following along, and it's not enough time now. We can talk about it later, but we have to go further.
That is a terror to your kasha.
Okay, if you could summarize the next time, that's good, but we can't read the whole thing. Hashem judges a person only according to what he is presently. Same as Gemara, and even though Hashem knows the future and it's going to become bad, Hashem doesn't judge him according to the knowledge of the future. He judges him according to what he is presently. Shenema, that's talked about by Ishmael, and he was dying from thirst, and Hashem listened to the voice of the child. Hashem Usham. And Rashi means down the Medrash that the Malachim said, "How come he's saving him from thirst? His children, Ishmael's children, are going to cause Am Yisrael to die from thirst." And Hashem said, "Is he a tzaddik now?" So they said he's a tzaddik now. So I said, I judge only according to the present, even though I know the future bed's going to come out. I judge him according to what he is now. This comes in Agav, not about Rosh Hashanah, but Rabbi Yitzchak, all these more of Yitzchak, so that's another thing about Yitzchak. There are three things that bring up a person's sins. It makes mention a person's sins. It's going to cause him to be judged. Inclined wall, which means a dangerous place. You go under a dangerous place. The men at work, something where this place is dangerous. So that's then they talk in Shemaim. They make a trial. Should he be saved? He's in a dangerous place. Even tefillah, if a person looks into his tefillah to say that he's down well, he deserves to be answered. So that's then they look into it. Does he deserve to be answered? Just because he davened well doesn't mean he deserves to be answered. And Moses did not chaveru. If somebody gives over,
what does that mean? A person davens. Let's say someone.
He shouldn't think that he deserves to be answered. He's supposed to daven. He could be happy that I daven, but he shouldn't think that he deserves to be answered. Not because of his davening, not because of his merit. So if he looks into his davening that I daven, and now I hope to be answered, I expect to be answered.
So on the daven, they daven slichos, and they daven no Rosh Hashanah.
They don't deserve to be answered because they would daven well. It's not, a person, I don't understand Havmina so much. Just because he daven well, he deserves to be answered.
Hashem answers.
It doesn't mean he deserves to be answered.
So
It doesn't mean that
he knows that he says, you know that daven, Hashem answers tefillas. That's okay.
It doesn't deserve it. He doesn't deserve it. Yeah. And he also should know there are cheshbonos of Shen Yom Achid and things like that. He shouldn't think that since I daven, I'm going to get it. If a person gives over to Hashem the judgment of his fellow man, he says there's something between me and him. Hashem judge the case. That's a dangerous thing to do because then they open up the case. Does he deserve it? Maybe he doesn't deserve it. If somebody gives over the judgment of his fellow man to Hashem, he's going to be punished first. How do you see that? That when Sarah had a complaint against Avram, she said, Hashem should judge. That's a dangerous thing to do. And you see at the end of the whole story, watch later on, but it says that Sarah died first. That Avram buried her, means she died first. So it's not a safe thing to ask Hashem to judge somebody. There are four things that cut up, tear up the decree of man. Even though there's a bad decree against him, there are four things he could do that could cause that the Gzar Din should be torn up. Eluhain, tzedakah, tzedakah, shini Hashem, shini Maisa. Tzedakah, which means charity, as we say. Tzedakah, to cry out to Hashem, to change one's name, and to change one's actions. The last one is the easiest one, change one's actions. That's Shuvah. So surely that gets changed exactly. The other one's Achidushin. Tzedakah, tzedakah, to give tzedakah, to cry out to Hashem, and changing the name. Changing the name, the means that the person, he also looks at himself differently. I'm a different person now. Tzedakah, d'chsiv, tzedakah taslim imavis. We see tzedakah because it says tzedakah saves from death. Tzedakah, d'chsiv, vayitzak ol Hashem v'sal lahem, omam tzedakah yitzim. They cried out to Hashem when they were in the narrow straits and pain problems, and Hashem took them out from their stress. Shini Hashem d'chsiv v'savai sh'tzachol l'sikwa shemo sarai ki seva shemo d'chsiv v'rachti yosav v'gam tzati meno l'chavim. It says Hashem told Avram to change the name of Sarai to Sarah, and right away it says that I blessed her, and I know it says right away, maybe later. I forgot exactly how close the Psukim are to each other, but it says that I'm going to bless her and give to you from her a son. So you see that it changed the Gzardin. First it was Gzardin, she shouldn't have children, and after they changed the name, then it was Gzardin, she should have children. Shini Ma'aseh D'Siv Ya'alakim Es Masayim. Over there it says by Ninveh, Hashem saw what they did. D'Siv Ya'nachem Elokim Al Hashem Diber L'Asos Lahem V'Lo Asa. That Hashem did not punish Ninveh because they changed their ways. So those are four things. How does it go over there again? Tzedakah, tzedakah, shini Hashem, shini Maisa, and now some say even a fifth thing. Some say that a person changes his place. Also, that's the reason why the Gzardin should be changed. First one line, and then that Hashem told Avram to go to a different from his land, and then it says, "I'm going to make you into a great nation." That means here, you're not going to be a great nation. Over there, you are going to be. So that means that there's a Gzardin which is changed because of the change of place. But the Gemara says that that's machlokes. That's only a yeshomim. But the first opinion said not. That's because Eretz Yisrael, not because he changed his place, because he went to Eretz Yisrael. So it's true. Everybody would agree if a person changes to go to Eretz Yisrael over there, that is Mekover Gzardin Shalom. But just to change places from America to Australia, that doesn't say that it's gonna help. Tanakama says that the yeshomim say yes. Shini Makam also is the reason. Maybe also the same idea. He looks. It's probably a way that he changes himself very much. I imagine that the pshat is because Shini Hashem and Shini Makam, all these things, they change a person because he looks at himself as being a new start. He starts off again. Why? Why is that? That's what it says over here. But why is that?
Rebbe, there are some Meforshim here that say the same thing you're saying, but he says all five of them, and the Smog says it best maybe. Sha'af shinu Hashem hu lekaper al chato v'akavana b'shinu Hashem lahara shani acher ve'eni oto ha'ish sha'asa osa ma'isa. And he brings the Rambam and he brings the Ran and others. They're all saying the same thing, that all of these things are indicative of Dinei Tshuva, that I'm not the same person.
The difficulty with this is that it says Shini Maisa. So if the thing is Shini Maisa, then everything else is just Emsa'i to do Shini Maisa. It's a little difficult. Yes or no?
Also, sometimes the din on a makkah.
So it could be that some things are inherent, not because, if you want to say Pshat, that's not because of an Emsa'i, a means. So then it means that there's on a certain place, or maybe the same name also, not only as a Shini Hashem, maybe as a Shini Maisa, maybe also there's something inherent in these things. The name, the place, it could be. Next Gemara, also Aga, the third white line, it comes in Aga because of Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak is the speaker over here on this page. A person is chayiv to receive his, what's the word, lahakbil, to receive, I guess he said like a reception, to receive his Rebbe on the Chag. He's supposed to visit Rebbe on the Chag. This was the Haftorah, and how could by Ashes, by the Shunamis, and she went to Elisha, and her husband was surprised. Why are you going? It's not Chodesh or Shabbos. That means that if it would have been Chodesh and Shabbos, he wouldn't have been surprised because it was regular. They went to visit the Navi on Chodesh and Shabbos. But Chodesh and Shabbos, he bought Lala Mezla. That it was normal for her to go if it was Chodesh and Shabbos. So here it's a kasha. The Gemara started about Regel, and then it ends off about Chodesh and Shabbos. So it's interesting. Rabbi Hanan even has such a gersa in the Gemara. He has a gersa in the Gemara that says Marsa kasha. We're talking about Regel, and he brings Chodesh and Shabbos. So he says the Gemara answers that according to his gersa, that if you live far away, then if you live close by, then maybe Chodesh and Shabbos. But if you live far away, then at least on the Regel. So there is such a din to be malchus b'nei Rabbi Regel.
I think it's beautiful. I think it could be that's the reason why you say to the Rav Shabbos. you
It's
know,
called to be Machbel Pnei Rabba B'chod B'Shabbos. Okay. A person is chayv to purify himself in the regular. This is in times of the Beis Hamikdash in order to be in the Kabbanis. But they say nowadays it doesn't apply. Really, people do it as a zeka, but they're not really mechuyev. The person is supposed to purify himself in the regular. Shenema, it says in the pasuk, don't touch the dead carcass. And there's really no issue to touch a dead carcass. It does become tummy, but okay, so it should say if he touches the dead carcass, it becomes tummy. Why does it say don't do it? There's no issue to do it. So it means don't do it at a certain time in the year. Certain time in the year is supposed to become tar, and that is the regular. The Brisa says so. I'm not going to veil. You might think that they read the pasuk literally that you're not allowed to become tummy. You're not allowed to touch the dead carcass. You become tummy. Not a corpse of a person, the carcass of an animal. So you might think that it's asa. So it says Tamaloma, Marla Kohen Bnei Aaron, Bnei Aaron was on Bnei Yisrael and was on. That by the din of Tumas Meis, even to touch a corpse of a person, it's also only also for a Kohen. Kohen are not allowed to become tummy. Israel are allowed to become tummy. If even to become tummy to a dead person, there's no Isra on Yisrael to become tummy, only on a Kohen. So if they have no Isra to become tummy to a dead person, they surely have no Isra to become tummy to a dead animal. And also Kohanim also have no such Isra. That this halacha that says that don't touch the dead carcass is only on the Chag. On the Chag, a person should be Torah, and we said the reason is because he brings Kavanas. Rav Kus B'doi, new Gemara, famous Gemara, Rav Kus B'doi, Rav Yochanan. Rav Kus B'doi said in the name of Rav Yochanan, Shlosh is from the Ftachim Rosh Hashanah. There are 3 books open on Rosh Hashanah, Echad Shel Rishon Gemur, Echad Shel Tzadikim Gemur, and Echad Shel Beinoniyim. One book for the completely righteous, some for completely wicked, the words seem to say, and one is for the Beinoniyim, something in between. Tzadikim Gemur, Nechtavim, Nechtam L'Alta L'Chaim. This is the whatever I guess the Yochanan Leil Rosh Hashanah, V'Nechtav V'Nechtam L'Alta L'Chaim. So, the simple shot in the Gemara would be that the Rosh and the Tzaddik over here are not wicked and righteous, because you have people that are righteous and they die, and there are people that are wicked and they live. So they say that the possible shot will be that it doesn't mean, it means Bedino. If he's definitely given a year of life. It's like saying the Sefer Chaim, Sefer Mason, the ones who are, the book doesn't mean after the book of what he did in his past, but it means the book of what he's going to be inscribed for. So those are people that are definitely inscribed for the book of life. Those are people that are definitely inscribed for death. They're going to die this year. Even if he's a tzaddik, that's what they were trying to say. That even if he's a great righteous person, but if he's supposed to die this year, that's called Sifrim Rishon. Like he missed out, and this judgment he lost in this judgment, even though he's a tzaddik. Or if he's going to live this year, even though he's a Russia, that's called that he's a tzaddik. He's a tzaddik bedino, and this judgment he's a tzaddik. That might be the Pasuk Shana Gemara, and they are Nechtav V'Nechtam L'Alta L'Chayim, and Rishon Gemur Nechtav V'Nechtam L'Alta L'Misa. Already on Rosh Hashanah. But Beinoniyim, those who are not absolute, either to live or to die, then they're hanging in between Till Yom Kippur, and that's going to be the Gzar Din. By Yom Kippur, it's going to be decided if they're going to live or not. There's a reference in the pasuk that there are these 3 books. Of course, it doesn't mean a literal book. That doesn't mean a physical book. It means that there's the record of who's going to die, who's going to live, and those who are hanging until Yom Kippur. So it means a pasuk where it has 3 remazim. They're going to be erased from the book of the living, and they're not going to be inscribed in the book of the righteous. So the Gemara dashes that Yimachu is going to be Yimachu, and then Misefer, and then Chayim. Yimachu Misefer. Yimachu Misefer is one. Says Sifrin Shel Rishon Gemurim. Those are the ones who are going to definitely die. Yimachu Misefer, they're going to be erased. That means they're going to die. And then it says Chayim. It says Sifrin Shel Tzadikim. And then Im Tzadikim Ali Kosei was the Sifrin Shel Beinoniyim. That there are those that are definitely going to be erased, that's Rishon. Those that are definitely going to live, that's called Chayim. And then they're not going to be written in Tzadikim, that means that they're hanging. That's going to be the Beinoniyim. Another Rashi for the same point, if Nachum Yitzchak Kama Mayocha, after Moshe Rabbeinu said to Hashem, if you don't forgive Bnei Yisrael, so erase me from the book that you wrote. So Mechenina, Mesifrecha Asher Kasafta. Mechenina is the Sifrin Shel Rishon. That's the book to erase. Also being erased, that means someone who's going to be erased, he's going to die. The Sifrecha is a Sifrin Shel Tzadikim, that they're going to live. Asher Kasafta is a Sifrin Shel Beinoniyim. I don't see how you dash it over here. Any Rashi to explain what do you see anything in the words Asher Kasafta? Rashi doesn't explain. So I don't see what the Rashi is exactly. What do you see from Asher Kasafta? But from there, says there are 3 books. So those are definitely, there are some that are already decided from Rosh Hashanah if they're going to live or die, And then there are some that are not decided until Yom Kippur. Okay, yes, everybody. Thank you, thank you. Yes, thank you. It's 12 o'clock. So usually we go to 1 o'clock, but I don't feel up to it today. So if it's okay, if I would just cancel now, I just, the I'm eating the wrong kinds of foods. So
Mazel
it's
tov.
okay. I mean,
Feel-
thank you. But you, I'm sorry for canceling.